How are you guys doing? Today is Thursday, April 22nd, 2021, out here in this quarantine. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to review the Elite matchups and performances from yesterday, Wednesday, April 21st, and of course, I'm going to preview everything that's going on today as we navigate through the world of sports one day at a time. Starting in the NBA, looking at the primetime matchups, the first primetime matchup from yesterday came on NBA TV as the Philadelphia 76ers hosted the Phoenix Suns. In this matchup, the Phoenix Suns would beat the Philadelphia 76ers 116-113 after outscoring the Sixers by 3 in the second half, coming into halftime completely tied up. For the Sixers in this matchup, their leading scorer was their elite starting center, Joel Embiid from Kansas, who finished with 38 points, 17 rebounds, and 4 assists, alongside 8 turnovers in 33 minutes, as he shot 14 for 23 from the field, 3 for 5 from 3, and 7 for 9 from the foul line. And then for the Phoenix Suns in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their elite starting point guard, Chris Paul, out of Wake Forest, who finished with 28 points, 3 rebounds, and 8 assists in 34 minutes, shooting 10 for 17 from the field, 5 for 8 from 3, and 3 for 4 from the foul line. Alongside him in the starting lineup, their elite starting shooting guard out of Kentucky, Devin Booker, would finish with 19 points, 3 rebounds, and 7 assists in 30 minutes, shooting 6 for 14 from the field and 7 for 8 from the line. With this win, the Phoenix Suns are now 42-16. That is the second best record in the NBA and the second best record in the Western Conference. They have now won their last 2 games in 8 of their last 10 games. In the Western Conference playoff picture, they now sit a game and a half behind the first place Utah Jazz, and they sit a game and a half ahead of the third place Los Angeles Clippers, just to show where the Phoenix Suns are. Looking down the Eastern Conference, with this loss, the Philadelphia 76ers are now 39-19. The Sixers they still hold the best record in the Eastern Conference, even though they've lost their last 2 games. They still won 6 of their last 10. In the playoff picture, they currently sit half a game ahead of the second place Brooklyn Nets, 10.5 games ahead of the 8th place Charlotte Hornets in the Eastern Conference playoff picture, and they currently sit 21.5 games ahead of the last place Detroit Pistons in the Eastern Conference, just to show where they sit. Looking at the second primetime game of the night, jumping to LA, the Clippers went on to host the Memphis Grizzlies, and in this matchup, the Clippers would beat the Grizzlies 117-105 to also pick up their 42nd win of the season. For the Memphis Grizzlies in this matchup, they would actually get outscored by 14 in the third and then 7 in the fourth. The Clippers went on to outscore the Clippers by 20. They outscored the Grizzlies by 21 points in the second half to overcome their deficit. Looking at how the Grizzlies fared in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their elite starting point guard out of Murray, John Morant, who finished with 22 points, 7 rebounds, and 4 rebounds in 31 minutes, as he shot 9 for 15 from the field and 4 for 6 from 3. From the Los Angeles Clippers, their leading scorer would be their starting shooting guard out of Duke, Luke Kennard, who finished with 28 points and 7 rebounds in 38 minutes, shooting 10 for 16 from the field, 6 for 7 from 3, and 2 for 3 from the foul line. Alongside him in the starting lineup, their starting small forward, Marcus Morris Sr., would finish with 25 points in 32 minutes, shooting 9 for 19 from the field, 4 for 6 from 3, and 3 for 5 from the foul line. With this win, the Los Angeles Clippers are now 42-19. That is the third best record in the Western Conference, as they have now won their last 3 games. They have now won 9 of their last 10. In the Western Conference playoff picture, they now sit a game and a half behind the second place Phoenix Suns, and they now sit 2.5 games ahead of the fourth place Denver Nuggets, as they trail the Utah Jazz by a game in the conference. With this loss, the Memphis Grizzlies are now 29-28. That is the 8th best record in the Western Conference, as they have now lost their last 2 games, but they've still won 5 of their last 10. In the Western Conference playoff picture, they currently trail the 7th place Dallas Mavericks by 2 games, and they sit a game ahead of the 9th place Golden State Warriors and the 10th place San Antonio Spurs, who are just on the outside looking in. Looking at the games that weren't on primetime yesterday, jumping out to Cleveland, the Cleveland Cavaliers hosted the Chicago Bulls and were able to pull off a 121-105 win. The Cavaliers would outscore the Chicago Bulls by 22 points in the first half and then 10 in the third, to pick up their 21st win of the season. For the Chicago Bulls in this matchup, their leading scorer will come off the bench as their power forward out of Arizona, Lowry would finish with 16 points in 21 minutes, shooting 5 for 7 from the field, 4 for 5 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. And then in their starting lineup, their all-star starting center, Nikola Vucevic, would finish with 9 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, and 5 turnovers in 25 minutes as he shot 4 for 12 from the field and 1 for 5 from the three-point line. For the Cleveland Cavaliers in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their starting point guard out of Alabama, Colin Sexton, who finished with 30 points, 3 rebounds, and 7 assists in 31 minutes, shooting 11 for 17 from the field, 3 for 5 from 3, and 5 for 6 from the foul line. And alongside him, their point guard out of Vanderbilt, Darius Garland, would finish with 25 points and 2 steals in 29 minutes, shooting 8 for 13 from the field, a perfect 4 for 4 from the three-point line, and a perfect 5 for 5 from the foul line. With this win, the Cleveland Cavaliers are now 21-37. That is the third worst record in the Eastern Conference. With this win, they've won 4 of their last 10 games. In the Eastern Conference, they currently sit 7.5 games behind the 8th place Charlotte Hornets outside of the Eastern Conference playoff picture, and they currently trail the first place 76ers by 8 games in the conference. With this loss, the Chicago Bulls are now 24-34. That is the 4th worst record in the Eastern Conference. And with this loss, they've now lost 6 of their last 10 games as well as the Cavaliers. They currently sit 4.5 games behind the 8th place Charlotte Hornets outside of the Eastern Conference playoff picture, and the Chicago Bulls now trail the Philadelphia 76ers by 15 total games in the conference. Looking out to Indianapolis, the Indiana Pacers hosted the Oklahoma City Thunder and were able to pull off a 122-116 win. The difference would come in the first half where they outscored Oklahoma City by 10 points. For the Thunder in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their starting power forward, Darius Bazley, who finished with 26 points and 9 rebounds in 37 minutes, shooting 9 for 25 from the field and 7 for 9 from the foul line. Alongside him in their starting lineup, their starting shooting guard out of Kansas, Svi Mikhailuk, would finish with 20 points and 9 rebounds, as well as 2 blocks and 5 turnovers in 36 minutes, shooting 9 for 16 from the field and 2 for 5 from 3. For the Indiana Pacers in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their starting point guard, Malcolm Brogdon, who finished with 29 points, 15 rebounds, and 7 assists in 39 minutes, shooting 11 for 23 from the field, 3 for 8 from 3, and a perfect 4 for 4 from the line. Alongside him in their starting lineup, their starting shooting guard out of Michigan, Karis LeVert, would finish with 28 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, and 4 steals in 41 minutes, shooting 11 for 25 from the field and 5 for 6 from the foul line. And then their starting forward, O'Shea Brissett, would finish with 23 points, 12 rebounds, a couple of steals, and 3 blocks in 42 minutes as he shot 8 for 16 from the field and 5 for 8 from the foul line. With this win, the Indiana Pacers are now 27-31. That is the 9th best record in the Eastern Conference, as they have now won 5 of their last 10 games. They currently sit a game and a half behind the 8th place Charlotte Hornets outside of the Eastern Conference playoff picture, and they currently sit 12 full games behind the first place Philadelphia 76ers in the conference. With this loss, the Oklahoma City Thunder are now 20-39. That is the 3rd worst record in the Western Conference. They currently hold the worst losing streak in the NBA, as they have now lost their last 12 games. They currently sit 10 games behind the 8th place Memphis Grizzlies outside of the Western Conference playoff picture, and they currently sit 24 full games behind the first place Utah Jazz in the conference, just to show where they are. Jumping out to Madison Square Garden, the New York Knicks hosted the Atlanta Hawks and were able to pull off a 137-127 win in overtime, outscoring the Hawks 15-5 in that period. For the Atlanta Hawks in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their starting center, Clint Capella, who finished with 25 points, 22 rebounds, and 2 steals in 41 minutes, shooting 12 for 17 from the field. Their elite starting point guard, Trae Young, would finish with 20 points, 2 rebounds, 14 assists, and 4 steals in 30 minutes, as he shot 6 for 17 from the field, 1 for 4 from 3, and a perfect 7 for 7 from the line. And then their starting shooting guard, Bogdan Bogdanovic, would finish with 20 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 steals in 42 minutes, shooting 8 for 19 from the field and 4 for 10 from 3. For the New York Knicks in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their all-star power forward, Julius Randle, who finished with 40 points, 11 rebounds, and 6 assists in 41 minutes, shooting 11 for 21 from the field, 6 for 8 from 3, and 12 for 13 from the foul line. Off the bench for the Knicks, their point guard, former NBA MVP Derrick Rose, would finish with 20 points in 30 minutes, shooting 8 for 12 from the field, 1 for 1 from 3, and 3 for 4 from the foul line. And also off the bench for New York, their shooting guard, Emmanuel Quickly, would finish with 20 points in 30 minutes as well, shooting 7 for 11 from the field, 4 for 6 from 3, and 2 for 3 from the foul line. With this win, the New York Knicks are now 33-27. That is the fourth best record in the Eastern Conference, as they now hold an NBA best 8-game win streak, as they have won 8 of their last 10 games. In the Eastern Conference playoff picture, they now sit 3.5 games ahead of the third place Milwaukee Bucks, and they now sit half a game ahead of the fifth place Atlanta Hawks, who they just beat. And with this loss, the Atlanta Hawks now hold the fifth best record in the Eastern Conference, as with this loss, they've still won 7 of their last 10 games. In the Eastern Conference playoff picture, they now trail the fourth place New York Knicks by half a game, and they now sit a half a game ahead of the sixth place Boston Celtics. And overall, the Atlanta Hawks trail the Philadelphia 76ers by 7.5 games, and the Knicks trail them by 7. Looking out to Washington, D.C., the Washington Wizards hosted the Golden State Warriors and were able to pull off a 118-114 win. They won by 4 after outscoring the Golden State Warriors by 11 points in the fourth quarter, coming in, of course, trailing by 7, but they outscored them by 11 to win the game, their 25th of the season. For the Golden State Warriors in this matchup, their leading scorer will come off the bench, as their shooting guard Kelly Oubre Jr. would finish with 24 points, 9 rebounds, and 2 blocks in 37 minutes, shooting 8 for 17 from the field, 2 for 4 from 3, and a perfect 6 for 6 from the line. Alongside him off the bench, their other guard Jordan Poole would finish with 22 points and 2 steals in 25 minutes, shooting 7 for 16 from the field, 6 for 10 from 3, and 2 for 3 from the foul line. And in their starting lineup, their goated starting point guard Steph Curry would finish with 18 points, 7 rebounds, and 8 assists, alongside 6 turnovers in 36 minutes, as he shot 7 for 25 from the field, 2 for 14 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the line. For the Washington Wizards, their leading scorer would be their elite starting shooting guard Bradley Beal, who finished with 29 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2 steals in 36 minutes, shooting 8 for 21 from the field, 2 for 6 from 3, and a perfect 11 for 11 from the three-point line. Alongside him in the starting lineup, their elite starting point guard Russell Westbrook would finish with 14 points, 20 rebounds, 10 assists, 3 steals, and 9 turnovers in 41 minutes. He was 1 turnover away from a quadruple-double. He would shoot 5 for 17 from the field, 1 for 4 from 3, and 3 for 4 from the foul line. Nonetheless, with this win, the Washington Wizards are now 25-33. That is the 10th best record in the Eastern Conference, as they have now won their last 6 games and 8 of their last 10. They currently sit 3.5 games behind the 8th place Charlotte Hornets outside of the Eastern Conference playoff picture, and at the moment they currently trail the first place Philadelphia 76ers by 14 total games in the conference. With this loss, the Golden State Warriors are now 29-30. With this loss, they've still won 6 of their last 10 games. They sit 1 game behind the Memphis Grizzlies outside of the Western Conference playoff picture, and they currently trail the first place Utah Jazz by 15 total games in the conference, just to show where they are. Jumping out to Tampa Bay, the Toronto Raptors hosted the Brooklyn Nets and were able to pull off a 114-103 win. They would outscore the Brooklyn Nets by double digits in the second and third quarter after the Nets took a 13-point lead in the first. And looking at how the Nets performed in this matchup, their leading scorer was their elite starting point guard out of Duke, Kyrie Irving, who finished with 28 points, 11 rebounds, 8 assists, and 3 steals in 37 minutes, as he shot 10 for 21 from the field, 2 for 5 from 3, and a perfect 6 for 6 from the foul line. And alongside him in the starting lineup, their elite power forward Blake Griffin would finish with 9 points, 4 rebounds, and 2 assists in 19 minutes, shooting 3 for 6 from the field and 3 for 5 from the foul line. And off the bench, their small forward, Bruce Brown, would finish with 21 points and 14 rebounds in 30 minutes, shooting 8 for 14 from the field, 2 for 4 from 3, and 3 for 4 from the foul line. For the Raptors in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their elite starting power forward, Pascal Siakam, who finished with 27 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists, and 2 steals in 38 minutes, shooting 10 for 19 from the field, 2 for 5 from 3, and 5 for 6 from the foul line. Their starting small forward, OG Anunoby, would finish with 25 points and 2 blocks in 35 minutes, shooting 8 for 14 from the field and a perfect 5 for 5 from the foul line. And also in the starting lineup for the Raptors, their elite starting point guard, Kyle Lowry, would finish with 14 points, 7 rebounds, and 5 assists in 35 minutes, shooting 4 for 12 from the field, 3 for 9 from 3, and 3 for 4 from the foul line. With this win, the Toronto Raptors are now 25-34. That is currently the 5th worst record in the Eastern Conference, even though they've won their last 4 games and 6 of their last 10. They currently sit 4 games behind the Charlotte Hornets outside of the Eastern Conference playoff picture, and they currently trail the Philadelphia 76ers by 14.5 games in the Eastern Conference. With this loss, the Brooklyn Nets are now 39-20. That is the second best record in the Eastern Conference. With this loss, they've lost 5 of their last 10 games, but nonetheless, they still sit half a game behind the first place Philadelphia 76ers in the Eastern Conference, and they currently sit 3 games ahead of the third place Milwaukee Bucks at the moment, just to show where the Nets are in the Eastern Conference playoff picture. Jumping out to Houston, the Houston Rockets hosted the best team, or the team holding the best record in the NBA, the Utah Jazz. In this matchup, the Jazz would beat the Rockets 112-89 after they outscored Houston by 7 in the first. They outscored them by 11 in the second to build an 18-point lead at halftime, and they outscored them by 10 in the third to build up a 28-point game at the end of 3 quarters. For the Houston Rockets in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their elite starting point guard, John Wall, who finished with 21 points, 3 rebounds, and 6 assists. He did all that in 30 minutes while shooting 8 for 19 from the field, 1 for 5 from 3, and a perfect 4 for 4 from the line. For the Utah Jazz, their leading scorer would come off the bench as their point guard, Jordan Clarkson, would finish with 22 points and 5 rebounds in 28 minutes, shooting 7 for 18 from the field and a perfect 4 for 4 from the foul line. Their leading scorer amongst their starters was their starting shooting guard, Joe Ingles, who finished with 21 points and 6 rebounds in 29 minutes, shooting 7 for 11 from the field, 6 for 10 from 3, and 1 for 2 from the foul line. Alongside him in their starting lineup, their elite starting center, Rudy Gobert, would finish with 19 points, 18 rebounds, and 2 blocks in 26 minutes as he shot 9 for 12 from the field and 1 for 2 from the foul line. And also their all-star starting point guard, Mike Conley, would finish with 11 points, 5 rebounds, 13 assists, and 2 steals in 25 minutes, shooting 4 for 12 from the field, 1 for 6 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. With this win, the Utah Jazz are now 44-15. That is the best record in the Western Conference and the best record in the NBA. They have now won their last 2 games and 6 of their last 10. In the Western Conference, they currently sit a game and a half ahead of the second-place Phoenix Suns. They sit 14 games ahead of the 8th-place Memphis Grizzlies in the Western Conference playoff picture, and they sit 29 full games ahead of the Houston Rockets in the Western Conference. With this loss, the Houston Rockets are now 15-44. That is the worst record in the Western Conference and the worst record in the NBA. They have now lost their last 2 games and 8 of their last 10. They currently sit 15 games behind the 8th-place Memphis Grizzlies outside of the playoff picture, and they currently sit 29 full games behind the first-place Utah Jazz in the Western Conference. Jumping out to Dallas, the Dallas Mavericks hosted the Detroit Pistons and were able to pull off a 127-117 win at home. The difference would come in the second quarter where they outscored the Pistons by 12, and every other quarter was roughly close. For the Pistons in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their starting small forward, Jeremy Grant, who finished with 26 points in 27 minutes, shooting 9 for 16 from the field, 3 for 6 from 3 on the night. And also in the starting lineup, their starting point guard, Corey Joseph, would end up with 24 points, 4 rebounds, and 5 assists, or 5 rebounds and 5 assists in 36 minutes as he shot 9 for 15 from the field, 3 for 5 from 3, and 3 for 4 from the foul line. For the Dallas Mavericks, their leading scorer would be their elite starting point guard, Luka Doncic, who finished with 30 points, 10 rebounds, 9 assists, and 2 steals in 33 minutes, shooting 10 for 22 from the field, 4 for 11 from 3, and 6 for 10 from the foul line. And then off the bench, their point guard, Jalen Brunson, would finish with 20 points and 5 assists in 29 minutes, shooting 8 for 12 from the field, 1 for 2 from 3, and a perfect 3 for 3 from the foul line. With this win, the Dallas Mavericks are now 31-26. That is the 7th best record in the Western Conference. And with this win, they've now won 5 of their last 10. In the Western Conference playoff picture, they now sit half a game behind the 6th place Portland Trailblazers. and they currently sit 2 games ahead of the 8th place Memphis Grizzlies as they trail the Utah Jazz by 12 games in the conference. With this loss, the Detroit Pistons are now 18-41. That is the worst record in the Eastern Conference, as they have now lost 6 of their last 10 games. They, at the moment, are sitting 11 games behind the 8th place Charlotte Hornets outside of the Eastern Conference playoff picture, and they currently trail the first place Philadelphia 76ers by 21.5 games in the conference. Staying within the same state, but jumping out to San Antonio, the San Antonio Spurs hosted the reigning Eastern Conference champions, the Miami Heat. In this matchup, the Miami Heat will go on to outscore the San Antonio Spurs by 22 points in the second half to pick up their 107-87 win over the Spurs to win by 20 points. For the Spurs in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their starting small forward, DeMar DeRozan, who finished with 15 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists in 32 minutes, shooting 6 for 13 from the field and 3 for 4 from the foul line. For the Miami Heat, their leading scorer would be their elite starting center, Bam Adebayo, who finished with 23 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, and 3 steals in 31 minutes, as he shot 8 for 12 from the field and 7 for 8 from the foul line. Off the bench, their guard out of Kentucky, Tyler Hero, would finish with 22 points and 6 rebounds in 25 minutes, as he shot 8 for 13 from the field, 5 for 6 from 3, and 1 for 2 from the foul line. And then back to the starting lineup for Miami, their elite starting small forward, Jimmy Butler, would finish with 18 points, 7 rebounds, and 11 assists in 34 minutes, shooting 6 for 13 from the field and a perfect 6 for 6 from the foul line. With this win, the Miami Heat are now 31-28. That is the 7th best record in the Eastern Conference. They have now won their last 3 games and 6 of their last 10. In the playoff picture, they currently sit half a game behind the 6th place Boston Celtics, and they now sit 2 games ahead of the 8th place Charlotte Hornets right now in the playoff picture, as they currently trail the Philadelphia 76ers by 8.5 games in the conference. With this loss, the San Antonio Spurs are now 28-29. That is the 10th best record in the Western Conference, as they have now lost 6 of their last 10 games, including this one. They currently sit 1 game behind the 8th place Memphis Grizzlies outside of the Western Conference playoff picture, and they currently trail the first place Utah Jazz by 15 games in the entire conference. Jumping out to Portland, the Portland Trailblazers host the Denver Nuggets, and the Denver Nuggets were able to pull off a 106-105 win after outscoring the Portland Trailblazers by 3 in the fourth quarter to get this win in the first place. For the Trailblazers, their leading scorer would be their elite starting point guard out of Weber State, Damian Lillard, who finished with 22 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, and 2 steals in 37 minutes, as he shot 9 for 23 from the field, 2 for 10 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. And for the Denver Nuggets, their leading scorer would be their elite starting center, Nikola Jokic, who finished with 25 points, 9 rebounds, and 5 assists in 36 minutes, as he shot 9 for 18 from the field, 1 for 6 from 3, and 6 for 7 from the foul line. With this win, the Denver Nuggets are now 38-20. That is the 4th best record in the Western Conference, as they have now won their last 4 games and 8 of their last 10. They now sit 2.5 games behind the 3rd place Los Angeles Clippers in the Western Conference, and they now sit 3 games ahead of the defending champs Los Angeles Lakers at the moment, as they now trail the first place Utah Jazz by 5.5 games now in the Western Conference. With this loss, the Portland Trailblazers are now 32-26. That is the 6th best record in the Western Conference, as they have now lost their last 3 games and 7 of their last 10 games. At the moment, they sit 3 games behind the 5th place defending NBA champs Los Angeles Lakers, and right now they sit half a game ahead of the 7th place Dallas Mavericks, as they trail the Utah Jazz by 11.5 games in the Western Conference. Last but not least, jumping out to Sacramento, the Sacramento Kings hosted the Minnesota Timberwolves and were able to pull off a 128-125 win. They won by 3 after outscoring the Timberwolves by 6 in the fourth quarter, coming in trailing by 3. For the Timberwolves in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their elite starting center out of Kentucky, Karl Anthony Towns, who finished with 26 points, 5 rebounds, and 6 assists in 33 minutes, shooting 7 for 17 from the field, 3 for 6 from 3, and a perfect 9 for 9 from the foul line. Off the bench, their center, Naz Reid, would finish with 24 points and 7 rebounds in 24 minutes, shooting 11 for 15 from the field and 2 for 3 from 3. And also off the bench, their elite point guard, D'Angelo Russell, would finish with 15 points, 3 rebounds, 9 assists, and 2 steals in 29 minutes, as he shot 6 for 12 from the field, 2 for 5 from 3, and 1 for 2 from the foul line. For the Sacramento Kings in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their starting point guard out of Kentucky, De'Aaron Fox, who finished with 30 points, 5 rebounds, 7 assists, and 2 steals in 39 minutes, as he shot 8 for 20 from the field, 1 for 6 from 3, and 13 for 14 from the foul line. Alongside him in the starting lineup, their starting shooting guard, Buddy Hield, would finish with 29 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists in 38 minutes, shooting 11 for 16 from the field and 7 for 11 from 3. And then their starting small forward out of UNC, Harrison Barnes, would finish with 22 points, 6 rebounds, and 7 assists in 38 minutes, shooting 7 for 14 from the field, 4 for 9 from 3, and 4 for 6 from the foul line. With this win, the Sacramento Kings are now 24-35. That is the 4th worst record in the Western Conference. With this win, they've only won 2 of their last 10 games, and they currently sit 6 games behind the 8th place Memphis Grizzlies outside of the Western Conference playoff picture. And at the moment, they currently trail the Utah Jazz by 20 games in the entire Western Conference. With this loss, the Minnesota Timberwolves are now 16-44, as they have now lost 6 of their last 10 games. That is the 2nd worst record in the Western Conference. At the moment, they currently trail the 8th place Memphis Grizzlies by 14.5 games in the outside of the Western Conference playoff picture. And they currently trail the 1st place Utah Jazz by 28.5 games in the entire conference, just to show where the Sacramento Kings are at the moment. That is what the NBA is looking like following yesterday's games. Looking into what to expect today, starting with the primetime matches, because today is Thursday. At 7 o'clock, the Milwaukee Bucks will host the Philadelphia 76ers on TNT. The Bucks are currently holders of the 3rd best record, and the Sixers are currently holding the best record in the Eastern Conference. And then following that game at 9:30, the Mavericks, the current holders of the 7th best record in the Western Conference, are going to host the defending NBA champs Los Angeles Lakers on TNT at 9:30. So outside of those primetime matchups, at 7 o'clock, it seems as though the Boston Celtics will host the Phoenix Suns in the TD Garden. And also at the same time, the Magic will face off against the Pelicans. At 8:30, the San Antonio Spurs will host the Detroit Pistons. And at 9 o'clock, the Chicago Bulls will host the Charlotte Hornets, just to show what the NBA is looking like. Staying within the arena, but shifting the context to the ice, looking at what's going on in the NHL this season, of course, with every team having to play within their own division, just checking it out. Not many games played yesterday, but just taking it division by division at the moment. Starting in the North, starting north of the border with the Canadian teams, the Edmonton Oilers hosted the Montreal Canadiens, and the Canadiens were able to beat the Oilers 4-3 on the road, led by their right winger Anderson, who had 2 goals for himself. With their 20th win on the season, the Montreal Canadiens now hold the 4th best record out of 7 in the North Division, as they now trail the Toronto Maple Leafs by 12 games in the division. Jumping out to the Central Division, the Chicago Blackhawks hosted the Nashville Predators and were able to beat them 5-4 at home to pick up their 22nd win of the season. With this win, the Chicago Blackhawks now hold the 6th best record out of 8 in the Central Division, as they now trail the Carolina Hurricanes and the Florida Panthers by 16 total games in the division. And jumping out west, the Arizona Coyotes would host the Minnesota Wild. The Wild would pick up a 4-1 win, as 3 of their goals came in the 3rd period. They came for a complete come-from-behind win. With this win, the Minnesota Wild now hold the 3rd best record in the West Division, as they now sit 7 games behind the Las Vegas Golden Knights. And then speaking of the Golden Knights hosted the San Jose Sharks and were able to pull off a 5-2 win, as they were able to score 2 goals each in the 2nd and 3rd period, led by their center, Marchessault, who finished with 2 goals and 2 assists on his own. With their 33rd win of the season, the Golden Knights now hold the best record in the West Division. They now sit 4 games ahead of the Colorado Avalanche, and it seems as though out of all the teams in the NHL, the Golden Knights are the first team to clinch a spot in the playoffs. So, of course, tip the hat to them. And then looking out to, that's what hockey is looking like going into today. Looking at today's matchup, starting with the prime times. At 7 o'clock, the Florida Panthers will host the Carolina Hurricanes on ESPN+. They are both tied for the very top of the Central Division, so it looks to be somewhat of a game. At the same time, on the same network, the New York Rangers will host the Philadelphia Flyers at 7 on ESPN+. And then outside of the primetime games, at 7 o'clock, the Winnipeg Jets will host the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Buffalo Sabres will host the Boston Bruins. The Tampa Bay Lightning will host the Columbus Blue Jackets. And the Pittsburgh Penguins will host the New Jersey Devils. At 7:30, the Detroit Red Wings will host the Dallas Stars. At 8 o'clock, the St. Louis Blues will host the Colorado Avalanche. And at 10 o'clock, the Vancouver Canucks will host the Ottawa Senators. And of course, once all these exhibitions are done, I'll get back to you tomorrow on those. Taking a really quick look into what's going on with the MLB following yesterday's games. Starting off in Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Phillies, hosted the San Francisco Giants and were able to walk it off of an Andrew Knapp single in the ninth inning to win their ninth game of the season. For the San Francisco Giants, who have been off to a great start this season, this matchup would end up going to Anthony DeSclafani, who had allowed 3 earned runs in 4 innings pitched as he struck out 5 batters on the day. He would not get the decision. The loss would end up going to their relief pitcher, Wandy Peralta, who would allow 1 earned run and 2 hits in the .1 inning that he pitched as he only got 1 player out. With this loss, Wandy Peralta is now 2-1 as a relief pitcher for San Francisco. In their lineup, their left fielder, Alex Dickerson, will go 3 for 4 with an RBI for himself. Their first baseman, Wilmer Flores, would go 2 for 4 with a run. Those are the only 2 players with multiple hits on the team. And then for Philadelphia, the start will go to Zach Eflin, who would allow only 1 earned run in 6 innings pitched as he struck out 3. He wouldn't get the decision because they went on a walk-off. The win would end up going to their relief pitcher Hector Neris, who would strike out 2 and not allow a single hit in the inning that he pitched. With this win, Hector Neris is now 1-1 as a relief pitcher on the season. In their lineup, their elite right fielder, Bryce Harper, would end up going 2 for 4 with an RBI and 2 runs, as Bryce Harper hit his 4th home run of the season. Their second baseman, Brad Miller, would go 4 for 5 with 2 runs. And then their shortstop, Nick Matone, would go 3 for 4 with a run himself. And then also, not to mention, their center fielder, Mickey Moniak, would go 1 for 3 with 3 RBIs and a run as he hit his first home run of the season yesterday. With this win, the Philadelphia Phillies are now 9-9. That is the second best record in the National League East, as they now trail the New York Mets by half a game. With this loss, the San Francisco Giants are now 11-7. That is the second best record in the National League West, as they now trail the defending champs Los Angeles Dodgers by 3 games in the division. Jumping out to Miami, the Miami Marlins hosted the Baltimore Orioles and were able to blank the Orioles 3-0, scoring all 3 of their runs in the 5th inning off of a 2-run double from Jesus Aguilar and an RBI single from Adam Duvall. For the Orioles in this matchup, the start and the loss would go to Bruce Zimmerman, who allowed 3 earned runs in the 4.2 innings that he pitched as he struck out 4. With this loss, Zimmerman is now 1-2 as a starting pitcher for Baltimore. No one on the Orioles was able to log more than 1 hit on the day. Of course, you can credit that to the player who had to start for Miami, Trevor Rogers. Trevor Rogers would allow no earned runs and 4 hits in 7 innings pitched as he struck out 8 batters on the day. With this win, Trevor Rogers is now 2-1, and following him picking up the win, Yimi Garcia would pick up his 4th save of the season for Miami. Starting off or looking at how their batting lineup fared for this matchup, their second baseman Jazz Chisholm would go 2 for 4 as he struck out twice. And then their first baseman Jesus Aguilar would go 1 for 3 with 2 RBIs and a run for himself. And then for Miami, their catcher Sandy Leon would go 2 for 3 with a run for himself. With this win, the Miami Marlins are now 8-9. That is the 3rd best record in the National League East, as they now trail the Mets by a game. And with this loss, the Baltimore Orioles are now 8-10. They are tied with the Blue Jays for the 3rd best record in the American League East, and they now trail the Boston Red Sox by 3.5 games in the division. Jumping out to Detroit, the Tigers hosted the Pittsburgh Pirates for a doubleheader. In the first matchup, the Pirates would beat the Tigers 3-2 as they scored all 4 of their runs in the 3rd inning, all off of RBI singles to pick up the lead and pick up their 8th win of the season. For the Detroit Tigers in this matchup, the start and loss would go to Michael Fulmer, who allowed 3 earned runs in 4 innings pitched as he struck out 3 on the day. With this loss, Michael Fulmer is now 1-1 as a starting pitcher for Detroit. No one for Detroit was able to log more than 1 hit on the day, and of course you can credit that to the Pittsburgh Pirates starting pitcher Tyler Anderson. Tyler Anderson would allow 2 earned runs in 5 innings pitched as he struck out 7. With this win, he is now 2-2 as a starting pitcher for the Pittsburgh Pirates, and the save will go to Richard Rodriguez, his 2nd of the season, as he pitched a full inning. In their batting lineup, their second baseman Adam Frazier would go 2 for 4 with a run, and then their designated hitter Phillip Evans would go 2 for 4 with a run for himself. With this win, this would carry momentum into the second game, and the Detroit Tigers would win in the second game of the doubleheader to even up the just to even up the doubleheader following yesterday, as they would go on to win this game 5-2, giving Spencer Turnbull his first win of the season. For the Pittsburgh Pirates, the start and the loss would go to Miguel Yajure. Sorry if I butchered the name. He would allow 4 earned runs in 4.1 innings pitches. He struck out 4. With this loss, Yajure is now 0-1 as a starting pitcher for Pittsburgh, and no one on the team was able to log more than 1 hit. Their second baseman, Phillip Evans, would go 1 for 3 with an RBI and a run as he hit his 4th home run of the season. For Detroit, in the second matchup, the win would end up going to Spencer Turnbull. He would allow 1 earned run and 2 hits in the 5 innings that he pitched, as he struck out 6 on the day. And then their closer, Gregory Soto, would pick up his second save of the season. Looking at how Detroit fared in their batting lineup, their shortstop Willie Castro would go 2 for 3 as he finished with an RBI for himself, and then their left fielder Nico Goodrum will go 1 for 2 as he walked. He finished with an RBI, and he would finish with 2 runs on the day, as Goodrum finished with his second home run of the season. With this split, or I guess with the split doubleheader, the Detroit Tigers are now 7-11. That is the 4th best record in the American League Central, as they now trail the Kansas City Royals by 3.5 games. And with winning a game and losing a game yesterday, the Pittsburgh Pirates are now 8-10. They are tied with the St. Louis Cardinals for the worst record in the National League Central, as they now trail the Milwaukee Brewers by 3 games in the division. Jumping out to Denver, the Colorado Rockies hosted the Houston Astros and were able to pull off a 6-3 win to give the Astros yet another win and have them slide from the start that they made in the season. For the Astros, the start and the loss will go to Jose Urquidy, who would allow 4 earned runs and 5 innings pitched as he struck out only 1 batter on the day. With this loss, Urquidy is now 0-2 as a starting pitcher. In their lineup, their elite third baseman Alex Bregman will go 2 for 3 as he finished with a run on the day. He was the only player to finish with more than 1 hit for the Astros on the day, as their whole team was held to 5 hits. And the start and the win for Colorado will go to Austin Gomber, who would allow 2 earned runs and 2 hits in 6 innings pitched as he struck out 6 batters on the day. With this win, Gomber is now 1-2. In the lineup for Colorado, their third baseman Ryan McMahon would end up going 2 for 5 with a run for himself. Their shortstop Trevor Story would go 1 for 3 with 2 RBIs. Their elite right fielder Charlie Blackmon would go 0 for 2 as he walked twice and struck out once. Their center fielder Jonathan Daza will go 2 for 4 with an RBI and a run as he hit the only home run of the day for Colorado, his first of the season. Their second baseman Garrett Hampson would end up going 2 for 4 with 2 runs himself. And then their catcher Dom Nunez would go 2 for 4 with 2 RBIs and a run for himself. With this win, the Colorado Rockies are now 6-12. That is the worst record in the National League West, as they now trail the defending champs Los Angeles Dodgers by 8 games in the division. With this loss, the Houston Astros are now 7-10. That is the worst record in the American League West, as they now trail the Oakland Athletics by 4 games in the division. Speaking of the Oakland Athletics, the Athletics hosted the Minnesota Twins and were able to beat the Twins 13-12 in the 10th inning after the Twins put up 2 runs in the 10th. It would take 3 runs from Oakland, finishing off of Ramon Laureano reaching off a throwing error. It would take a run from Tony Kemp and Elvis Andrus to bring the win home for Oakland in what was a dumpster fire of a play for Minnesota. For Minnesota in this matchup, the start would go to Kenta Maeda, who would allow 7 earned runs and 3 innings pitched as he struck out a batter. He would not get the decision. The loss would end up going to the relief pitcher Alex Colomé, who blew his 3rd save of the season, who allowed 1 earned run and 4 total runs in the 1.2 innings that he pitched. With his loss, Colomé is now 1-2 as a relief pitcher for Minnesota. And then in their lineup, their second baseman, Luis Arias, would go 2 for 5 with 2 runs on the day as he also walked. Their third baseman, Josh Donaldson, would go 4 for 6 with 2 RBIs and 3 runs as Josh Donaldson hit his first home run of the 2021 season. Their elite designated hitter, Nelson Cruz, would go 2 for 5 with 4 RBIs and 2 runs as Cruz hit 2 home runs yesterday. He now has 6 on the season. Their center fielder, Byron Buxton, would hit his 6th home run of the season as he finished 3 for 6 with 2 RBIs and 2 runs for himself. And then their shortstop, Jorge Polanco, would end up going 4 for 6 with an RBI and 2 runs for himself. And then for Oakland in this matchup, the start will go to Frankie Montas, who allowed 6 earned runs and 4 innings pitches. He struck out 4 batters on the day. The win would go to their relief pitcher, or Deolis Guerra. Guerra would allow no earned runs, no hits in the .1 inning that he pitched. He just logged one out, and with this win, he is now 1-0 as a relief pitcher. In the lineup for Oakland, their left fielder Mark Canha would go 2 for 5 with a run. Their second baseman Jed Lowry would go 2 for 5 with 2 RBIs and a run for himself. Their first baseman Matt Olson would go 3 for 5 with 3 RBIs and 2 runs. As Olson hit 2 home runs on the game, he now has 6 on the season. Their elite third baseman, Matt Chapman, would go 1 for 4 with an RBI and a run for himself as well. And then their right fielder, Seth Brown, would go 3 for 4 with 2 RBIs and a double, as Seth Brown hit his 3rd home run of the season. With this win for the A's, they are now 12-7. That is the best record in the American League West, as they now sit half a game ahead of the second-place Seattle Mariners. And with this loss, the Minnesota Twins are now 6-11. That is the worst record in the American League Central, as they now trail the Kansas City Royals by 4 games in the division at the moment. Jumping out to D.C., the Washington Nationals hosted the St. Louis Cardinals, and they were able to beat them 1-0. Their only run coming off of an Alex Avila RBI double, as both teams were pretty much kept in check by amazing pitching on both sides. For the St. Louis Cardinals, the start and the loss would go to Carlos Martinez, who would allow only 1 run and 4 hits in 6 innings pitched as he struck out 3 batters on the day. With this loss, Carlos Martinez is now 0-4 as a starting pitcher for St. Louis. And in their batting lineup, their elite first baseman Paul Goldschmidt would go 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts. Their elite third baseman Nolan Arenado would go 1 for 3 with a walk and a strikeout on the day. And then their shortstop, Paul DeJong, the only player with more than 1 hit, would go 2 for 3 with a walk and a strikeout for the day. For Washington, the start of the win would go to their goated starting pitcher, Max Scherzer, who would allow no earned runs and 4 hits in 6 innings pitched as he struck out 9 batters on the day. With this win, Max Scherzer is now 1-1 on the 2021 season, and the save would go to Brad Hand. Brad Hand would allow he would only walk 1 batter, allowing no hits, no runs in the last inning that he pitched. He now has 3 saves on the season. In the lineup for Washington, the only player that had more than 1 hit was their catcher. It was their catcher, Alex Avila, who will go 2 for 3 with the only RBI of the game. And with this win, the Washington Nationals are now 7-9. That is the worst record of the National League East, as they currently trail the New York Mets by 1.5 games. With this loss, the St. Louis Cardinals are now 8-10, tied with the Pittsburgh Pirates for the worst record in the National League Central. At the moment, they now trail the Milwaukee Brewers by 3 games in the NL Central, just to show where they are. Jumping out to Anaheim, the Los Angeles Angels hosted the Texas Rangers, and the Rangers were able to beat the Angels 7-4, scoring 6 of their 7 runs in the last 2 innings to pick up their ninth win of the season. For Los Angeles, the start will go to Jose Quintana, who would allow 1 earned run and 2 hits in 5 innings pitched as he struck out 8 batters on the day. The loss and the blown save would eventually get placed on their relief pitcher, Mike Mayers, who allowed 3 earned runs and while not registering a single out, as he allowed 2 home runs. With this loss, Mayers is now 1-1 as a relief pitcher for LA. In their batting lineup, their goated center fielder Mike Trout would go 2 for 4 with an RBI and a run as he hit his 6th home run of the season. And then their shortstop Jose Iglesias would end up going 2 for 4 with an RBI and a run as he hit his 1st home run of the season for LA. For the Rangers in this matchup, the start would go to Mike Foltynewicz, the former Atlanta Braves All-Star, who allowed 3 earned runs in 6 innings pitched as he struck out 6 batters on the day. He would not get the decision, as the win would come in relief to John King. John King would allow only 2 hits and no runs in the 1 inning that he pitched. With this win, King is now 2-0 as a relief pitcher for the Rangers. In their batting lineup, their designated hitter, Adolis Garcia, would end up going 2 for 5 with 3 RBIs and a run as he hit his 3rd home run of the season. And then their first baseman, Nate Lowe, would go 2 for 4 with an RBI and a run for himself as he hit his 5th home run of the season. With this win, the Texas Rangers are now 9-10. That is the 4th best record in the American League West, as they now trail the Oakland Athletics by 3 games in the division. And with this loss, the Los Angeles Angels are now 9-7. That is the 3rd best record in the American League East, as they now trail the Oakland Athletics by 1.5 games, just to show where they are. Jumping out to San Diego, the San Diego Padres hosted the Milwaukee Brewers, and the Brewers were able to beat the Padres 4-2 as they scored 3 runs in the 6th inning to take their lead off of a 2-run home run from Omar Narvaez, and then a Jace Peterson home run would increase their lead to double it. For the San Diego Padres in this matchup, the start will go to Dinelson Lamet, who only threw for 2 innings. The loss would eventually get tagged to their relief pitcher, Keon Kayla. Kayla would allow 3 earned runs in the 1 inning that he pitched, and with this loss, Kayla is now 2-1 as a relief pitcher this season. In their lineup, their center fielder, Trent Grisham, will go 2 for 5 with an RBI. Their elite shortstop, Fernando Tatis Jr., will go 1 for 4. Their elite third baseman, Manny Machado, will go 0 for 3 as he walked twice on the day, and like I said, Grisham was the only player to log more than 1 hit for San Diego, as the team was held to 7 hits. For the Milwaukee Brewers, the start, of course, was given to Adrian Hauser. Hauser would allow 2 earned runs and 4.2 innings pitched as he struck out 7 batters on the day. The win would end up going to their relief pitcher, Brent Suter, and the save would go to their elite closer, Josh Hader. Josh Hader would allow only 1 hit, striking out 2 batters in the inning that he pitched. That's his 3rd save of the season. For the Brewers in their batting lineup, their center, Omar Narvaez, would go 2 for 4 with 2 RBIs and 2 runs as he hit his 3rd home run of the season yesterday. And then their second baseman, Jace Peterson, would go 2 for 3 with 2 RBIs and a run for himself as he hit his 2nd home run of the season for Milwaukee. With this win, the Milwaukee Brewers are now 11-7. That is currently the best record in the National League Central, as they sit a game and a half ahead of the 2nd place Cincinnati Reds. With this loss, the San Diego Padres are now 10-10. That is the 3rd best record in the National League East, or the National League West, and as they currently sit 5 full games behind the defending champs Los Angeles Dodgers in the division. Jumping out to Cincinnati, the Cincinnati Reds hosted the Arizona Diamondbacks, and the Diamondbacks were able to pull off a 5-4 win, scoring 2 runs in the 8th to jump ahead to pick up their 7th win of the season. For Cincinnati, the start would end up going to Luis Castillo, who would allow 1 earned run and 3 total runs in 4 innings pitched as he struck out 4 batters on the day. He wouldn't get the decision, as the loss would go to Amir Garrett, their relief pitcher, as he allowed 1 earned run and he was only able to log 1 out on the day. In the lineup for Cincinnati, their left fielder, Adam Winkler, would go 2 for 4 on the day. Or I'm sorry, it would be Jesse Winkler. Sorry if I butchered the name and I got the name wrong. And then at third base, Kyle Farmer would end up going 2 for 4 with 3 RBIs and a run as he hit his 1st home run of the season for Cincinnati. For Arizona in this matchup, the start will go to Zach Gallen, who allowed 3 earned runs and 5.2 innings pitched as he struck out 6 batters on the day. The win would actually go to their relief pitcher, J.B. Bukauskas, who would only log 1 out on the day, but with this win, he is now 1-0 as a relief pitcher. And then Stephon Crichton would pick up his 2nd save of the season as he only allowed 1 hit, striking out a batter in the final inning for Arizona. In their lineup, their first baseman, Pavin Smith, would go 3 for 5 with 2 RBIs on the day, and their right fielder, Cole Calhoun, would go 2 for 5 with a run. With this win, the Arizona Diamondbacks are now 7-10. That is at this win, they picked up their 7th win of the season, and they carried this momentum into their 2nd game of their doubleheader, where they beat the Cincinnati Reds again 8-5, scoring all 8 of their runs in the 9th and 10th inning to beat the Reds. For the Reds in this matchup, the start would end up going to Tyler Mahle, who would allow no earned runs and 2 hits and 6.2 innings pitched as he struck out 9 batters on the day. But of course, Garrett would blow the save, and the loss would go to Cionel Perez. Perez would allow 2 earned runs and only log 1 out on the day. Perez is now 1-2 as a relief pitcher for Cincinnati. In their lineup, their right fielder, Tyler Naquin, would go 2 for 4 with 2 RBIs. And then their center fielder, Nick Senzel, would go 2 for 3 with a walk. And then their catcher, Tyler Stevenson, would end up going 2 for 4 with 2 runs on the day. For Arizona, the start would end up going to Merrill Kelly. Merrill Kelly would allow 3 earned runs and 5 innings pitched. He struck out 3 batters. He wouldn't get the decision. The win would go to their relief pitcher, Taylor Clark. Taylor Clark would allow 1 earned run, 2 total runs in the 2 innings that he pitched as he struck out a batter on the day. But with this win, he is now 1-0 as a relief pitcher on the season. In the lineup for Arizona, no one on the team was able to log more than 1 hit, but their left fielder, David Peralta, would go 1 for 4 with an RBI and 2 runs as he would finish with a walk. With both of these wins now, the Arizona Diamondbacks are now 8-10. That is the fourth best record in the National League West, as they now sit 6 games behind the defending champs Los Angeles Dodgers. And with losing 2 straight games yesterday, the Cincinnati Reds are now 9-8. That is the second best record in the National League Central, and they now trail the Milwaukee Brewers by a game and a half in the division. Jumping out to Yankee Stadium, the Yankees hosted the Atlanta Braves, and the Braves were able to beat the Yankees 4-1, holding the Yankees scoreless up until the 9th inning. For the Yankees in this matchup, the start and the loss will go to their elite starting pitcher, Corey Kluber, who allowed 2 earned runs in 4.2 innings pitched as he struck out 2 on the day. With this loss, Kluber is now 0-2 as a starting pitcher for the Yankees, and no one on the Yankees was able to log more than 1 hit on the day. Their elite second baseman, DJ LeMahieu, would go 0-5. Their elite right fielder, Aaron Judge, would go 1-2 as he walked twice. Their elite designated hitter, Giancarlo Stanton, would go 0-4 as he struck out once. Their third baseman, Gio Urshela, would go 1-3. Their elite shortstop, Gleyber Torres, would go 1-4. And then for the Atlanta Braves, the start and the win would go to their young pitcher, Ian Anderson, who allowed no earned runs and 4 hits in 6.2 innings pitched as he struck out 4 batters on the day. With this win, Will Anderson is now 1-0 as a starting pitcher for the Atlanta Braves. In their lineup, their elite first baseman, reigning National League MVP, Freddie Freeman, will go 0-3 as he walked twice and struck out once. Their elite left fielder, Marcell Ozuna, will go 0-4 as he finished with 2 RBIs and he also walked. Their elite second baseman, Ozzie Albies, would go 1-4 on the day, and their biggest performer would be their third baseman, Austin Riley. Austin Riley would go 2-2 with 2 walks as he finished with an RBI and 3 runs on the day for Atlanta, as he hit his first home run of the season yesterday. With this win, the Atlanta Braves are now 8-10. That is the 4th best record in the National League East, and they currently trail the New York Mets by a game and a half. With this loss, the New York Yankees are now 6-11. That is the worst record in the American League East, and they currently trail the Boston Red Sox by 5 games in the division. Speaking of the Red Sox hosted the Toronto Blue Jays yesterday, and the Blue Jays were able to beat the Red Sox 6-3 after scoring 4 of their 6 runs in the first 2 innings. For the Red Sox in this matchup, the loss would go to their starting pitcher, Garrett Richards, who would allow 4 earned runs in 4.2 innings pitched as he walked 6 batters and struck out 2. With this loss, Richards is now 0-2 as a starting pitcher for the Red Sox this season. In their lineup, their elite designated hitter, J.D. Martinez, would go 1-4 as he finished with a run on the day. Their second baseman, Marwin Gonzalez, would go 2-4 with a run on the day. And then their first baseman, Bobby Dalbec, would go 2-4 for himself. For the Toronto Blue Jays, the start will go to Trent Thornton, who would only pitch 2 games and allow no earned runs. The win would come in relief to Ryan Barucki. Barucki would allow no earned runs and only 1 hit, striking out 2 in the 2 innings that he played. With this win, Barucki is now 2-1 as a relief pitcher for Toronto. In their lineup, their shortstop, Bo Bichette, will go 2-4 with an RBI and a run. Their elite first baseman, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., will go 2-3 with an RBI and a run for himself, as he also walked twice. Their second baseman, Randall Grichuk, will go 2-5 with an RBI. And then their second baseman, Marcus Semien, will go 2-4 with a run on the day. With this win, the Toronto Blue Jays are now 8-10. They are tied with the Baltimore Orioles for the 3rd best record in the American League East, as they sit 3.5 games behind the Boston Red Sox. And with this loss, the Red Sox are now 12-7. They currently hold the best record in the American League East. They are tied with the Oakland Athletics for the best record in the American League. But right now in the division, they currently sit 2 games ahead of the Tampa Bay Rays at the moment. Jumping out to Chicago, the Chicago Cubs host the New York Mets on prime time and were able to pull up a 16-4 win. Just as of course their offense just exploded yesterday. For the New York Mets in this matchup, the loss would go to their starting pitcher David Peterson, who would allow 3 earned runs in 3.1 innings pitched as he struck out 3 batters on the day. With this loss, Peterson is now 1-2 as a starting pitcher for the Mets, and in their lineup, their shining star was their elite shortstop, Francisco Lindor, who would go 3-4 with an RBI and 2 runs, as Lindor would hit his first home run for the New York Mets in his career yesterday, and his first home run of the 2021 season. Their elite first baseman, Pete Alonso, will go 1-4 with 2 RBIs and a run as he hit his 3rd home run of the season. And then their third baseman, J.D. Davis, will go 2-4 with an RBI. For the Chicago Cubs in this matchup, their catcher, Wilson Contreras, would go 2-5 with 2 runs on the day. Their elite right fielder, Chris Bryant, would go 1 for 3 with 2 walks and 3 runs on the day. Their first baseman, Anthony Rizzo, would go 1 for 2 with 3 walks, an RBI, and 3 runs. Their elite shortstop, Javier Baez, would go 1 for 4 with 4 RBIs and 3 runs as he hit his 5th home run of the season yesterday. For the Chicago Cubs, their third baseman, Matt Duffy, would go 3 for 4 with 3 RBIs and 2 runs for himself. And then their second baseman, David Bodie, would go 2 for 4 with 4 RBIs and a run for himself. With this win, the Chicago Cubs are now 8-9. That is the third best record in the National League Central as they now trail the Milwaukee Brewers by 2.5 games in the division. And with this loss, the New York Mets are now 7-6. That is still the best record in the National League East, and they currently sit half a game ahead of the Philadelphia Phillies at the moment. Last but not least, jumping out to Kansas City, the Kansas City Royals hosted the Tampa Bay Rays and were able to pull off a 9-8 win after winning in the 9th inning off of a Salvador Perez walk-off single to give the Royals their 10th win of the season. For the Rays in this matchup, the start will go to Michael Wacha. Wacha would allow 3 earned runs and 5.2 innings pitched as he only struck out 1 on the day. The loss would go to their relief pitcher, Diego Castillo, who, of course, would allow 2 earned runs in the .2 innings that he pitched, as, of course, he blew the save and then would continue to lose the game for Tampa Bay. In their lineup, their left fielder, Austin Meadows, would go 2 for 3 with an RBI and a run on the day. Their third baseman, Joey Wendell, will go 2 for 4 with 3 RBIs and a run. Their second baseman, Brandon Lau, will go 1 for 5 with 2 RBIs and a run as he hit the only home run of the day for Tampa Bay, his third of the season. And then their right fielder, Brett Phillips, would go 2 for 3 with a run on the day as he also walked. For Kansas City, the start would go to, of course, their starting pitcher, who in this game was Jacob Junis. Junis would allow 5 earned runs and 5 innings pitched as he struck out 3 on the day. And the win will go to their relief pitcher, Scott Barlow, who allowed 1 earned run and 1.2 innings pitched as he struck out a batter on the day. In their lineup, their elite second fielder, Whit Merrifield, will go 0 for 5 as he finished with a run on the day. Their elite catcher, Salvador Perez, will go 2 for 5 with an RBI. And then their designated hitter, Jorge Soler, will go 3 for 4 with an RBI and 2 runs on the day. Soler would hit his second home run of the season for Kansas City. And with this win, the Royals are now 10-7. That is the best record in the American League Central as they now sit a game and a half ahead of the Cleveland Indians and the Chicago White Sox at the moment. And with this loss, the Tampa Bay Rays are now 10-9. That is the second best record in the American League East as they now trail the Boston Red Sox by 2 games. That is currently what the MLB is looking like leading into today's matchups, following all those games, looking forward to what's going on today. First, looking at the primetime games just to get an idea of what's going to be going on today. At 7:40, the Chicago Cubs will host the New York Mets on ESPN+. Trevor Williams will make the start for Chicago, and Joey Lucchesi will make the start for New York. At 12:35, Jeff Hoffman and the Cincinnati Reds are going to host Taylor Widener and the Arizona Diamondbacks. At 1:10, Jose Urena and the Detroit Tigers are going to host Mitch Keller and the Pittsburgh Pirates. At 6:10, 3-0 Aaron Savali and the Cleveland Indians are going to host Domingo Germán and the New York Yankees. At 7:10, the 2-0 Nick Pivetta and the Boston Red Sox are going to host 1-0 Justin Dunn and the Seattle Mariners. Both teams sitting at the top sitting at the tops of their divisions. The Mariners just down by a game, but this game is going to be very important. At 8:10, it'll be Christian Javier and the Houston Astros hosting Alex Cobb and the LA Angels. At 9:45, Aaron Sanchez and the San Francisco Giants are going to host Daniel Castano and the Miami Marlins. And then at 10:10, Walker Buehler, the elite starting pitcher of the Los Angeles Dodgers, is going to try to pick up his second win against Ryan Weathers in the San Diego Padres at 10:10. And that currently is what the MLB is looking like going into today. And then last but not least, taking a look at what's going on in the world of soccer, especially following yesterday's games. As we are coming close to the end of the season, we see more games in the middle of the week because there's no Champions League this week at the moment. But of course, starting off in the Premier League, Tottenham Hotspur was able to beat Southampton 2-1 to pick up a very important win in the table. They would get a 60th minute goal from Gareth Bale to tie it up, and then a penalty kick from Son Heung-min in the 90th minute would give Tottenham what they needed for the win. At the moment, they are currently holding the sixth best record in the Premier League, as they currently sit 2 points below fifth place West Ham and fourth place Chelsea at the moment, and they also sit 4 points ahead of Everton as they've played, or they sit right about even with Liverpool in the table with one more game played than Liverpool. But as of right now, that's where they're sitting. And then jumping out to Aston Villa, Man City was able to move into town and pick up their 24th win of the season. To extend their lead in the Premier League. They won this game 2-1 after Aston Villa would score in the first minute. It would be goals from Phil Foden and Rodri to give them the win. At the moment, they currently sit 11 points ahead of second place Manchester United with one more game played in the Premier League. As with everything kind of ticking down, it seems as though it is as though Manchester City is just a couple games away from winning the Premier League at the moment. Jumping out to the Bundesliga, Borussia Dortmund was able to beat Union Berlin 2-0 as Marco Reus would score the first goal and then Guerrero would score the second. Looking out to where they sit in the Bundesliga, they are currently holding the fifth best record at the moment as they sit 4 points below fourth place Eintracht Frankfurt to see qualification in Champions League. Jumping out to Italy, AC Milan hosted Sassuolo in a game that they most definitely needed to win, but they would end up losing it 2-1, a very big blow to AC Milan. With this loss, they now sit 10 points below Inter Milan, and they now sit 1 point ahead of Juventus. Juventus sitting right there after beating Parma 3-0, with two of their goals coming from their defender, Alexandro, and then their other goal coming from another defender, Matthijs de Ligt, their elite Dutch defender. But with this, Juventus now sits third in the table. They now sit 1 point behind them and 1 point ahead of Atalanta. And Atalanta still has one game to play. Atalanta very well could move into second place. But that's where Italian soccer is looking like. And also jumping out to Inter. Inter drew with Spezia 1-1, and with this, they now sit 10 points ahead of AC Milan, pretty clear of the table. But it seems as though they're gonna. It seems as though they're gonna run away with it. They could win Serie A any moment now. And then looking out at La Liga, Real Madrid was able to beat Cadiz 3-0, led by their elite French striker, Karim Benzema. He would score 2 goals in the first half. Real Madrid would score all 3 of their goals in the first half to pick up quite the win. And with this win, or with their 3 points, with their 3 goals, they pick up 3 points in the table. And at the moment, they are temporarily sitting ahead of Atletico Madrid on just off of head-to-head matchups. Even though Atletico Madrid has one more game to play, they are tied in the table. This puts the pressure on Atletico Madrid to win their next game, and that is right now what La Liga is looking like. Jumping out to the Coupe de France in the quarterfinals, AS Monaco was able to beat Lyon 2-0, and PSG was able to beat Angers 5-0, as 3 of their goals will come from their Italian striker Mauro Icardi, and then one of their goals would come from their elite Brazilian forward Neymar, as Neymar also forced the own goal, but he would only get credited with the goal in the 65th minute. With this win, of course, PSG and Monaco will advance to the semifinals, and that is what the Coupe de France is looking like. And looking forward to what's going on today. In Serie A, Atalanta will face off against AS Roma for a chance to jump up into the second place in Serie A. Looking out at La Liga, Atletico Madrid will face off against Huesca. Atletico Madrid, with a win or a draw, can take the lead in would take the lead in La Liga, as they are currently tied with Real Madrid on points, but they played one less game. And then Barcelona will host Getafe. Barcelona has played 2 less games, they played 2 less games than Real Madrid and 1 less game than Atletico. A win here could temporarily put them right back into third place, as they played 2 less games than Sevilla and sit 2 points below them. So the pressure is, of course, on Barcelona to beat Getafe. And with that said, that's virtually everything that's going on today, Thursday, April 22nd, out here in this quarantine. I want to thank everyone for listening to all 63 minutes of this piece. I hope all is well, and once all of today's exhibitions are finished, I will get back to you tomorrow on Friday, April 23rd, for another installment of The Elite. But once again, I want to thank everyone for being here. I'm James Sims, and thanks for listening to my piece, and peace out. I'll catch you tomorrow.